Good morning, everyone. Dr. Stillman and Jim Laird here today to talk to you about anti-aging medicine. This is one of my favorite topics. I do technically work in the world of anti-aging and regenerative medicine. And we should start by talking about what anti-aging medicine means. Jim, thanks for joining me. Anything
You're
you
welcome.
want
My pleasure.
to anything you want to say?
This is a really wild topic, and we're going to go all over the place today. At least I tend to, and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, but like, if you look at like books like the Bible or ancient texts like the Book of Enoch and some of the other more controversial texts, you look at some of the Native American writings. We've got people living to like several hundred years of age, right?
Yes, it's true.
So, and then we get into the industrial age, and we kind of, it's funny. I stayed in this cabin in Kentucky that was out in the middle of nowhere. It had no cell phone reception. It was built in the late 1850s, right? And they had all these pictures on the wall, and of course they had a graveyard right there in their backyard, and they had a picture, and they had like gravestones. These people and they had diaries and stuff, and I was flipping through them. These people would have 15, 16 children, and they'd lose 6 of them, right? So, really in the last 100, 150 years, a lot of the increase in life expectancy has been people just didn't die at birth. And then they didn't die from like trauma, or they didn't die from an infection. Mm-hmm. So this is a really interesting topic, because I think in our past we've lived a lot longer, in my opinion. But now we're preventing death of certain things, but we're making ourselves sicker in different ways. So this is a really interesting topic. And then what's being pushed in modern medicine today for being anti-aging doesn't match up with any of the people that I've spent time with. And I've spent time with dozens and dozens of supercentenarians, because I used to hang out in old folks' homes all the time when I was younger, because I loved talking to World War I veterans. And all these people were not super jacked. They were not super athletic. They were not physically impressive.
Right.
All those people died younger. So they're pushing this narrative of like, you need to be physically impressive to live longer. But the people that I actually see living longer are not that physically impressive. So it's really
well, why don't we just start right there? You just talked about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Anti-aging medicine is largely about vanity. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look good and feel good for as long as possible, because obviously this allows you to do more good for longer and look good doing it, right? And there's also a reality of what we might call pretty privilege. Being pretty, looking good gets you certain things in life. And for this reason, people are always chasing after not looking as old. But age is a really interesting phenomenon. We think of age as moving towards death, but age is really interesting in the sense of how we actually appear. Turns out that an older face has a more masculine appearance. Even women, as they age, even though they're women, their face appears more masculine. This is because of the long-term action of testosterone on their face. Now, women might then think, oh, well, maybe I need to knock out my testosterone in order to appear more feminine. Anytime anyone in the history of the world has messed with natural hormone levels, they've gotten burned. I don't mean replacing hormones, which we'll talk about today. That's part of anti-aging medicine. What I mean is people doing things like blocking estrogens, blocking testosterone, or certain types of, or metabolites of testosterone. That increasingly, as we study it, seems to be a losing game. And some people are going to come back and say, well, what about, this drug for this cancer, or that drug for that cancer? Blocking hormones has become very much in vogue in the cancer world. I'm very suspicious of this, although I am not an expert in it. And so this is a conversation between Jim and I. Neither one of us specialize in this. I don't presume to contradict anyone in the cancer world regarding blocking hormones. What I will tell you is, from the perspective of someone who takes care of people who want to look good and feel good for as long as possible, blocking and modulating hormones is actually one of the worst things that I see people doing for their health. And this comes back to what is youth. and what determines our appearance. And fundamentally, hormones determine our appearance. What do hormones depend upon? They depend upon all the things in nature that control them: light, water, electromagnetic fields, good quality sleep, your activity levels, stress, your thoughts, your emotions. All of these things come back to affect your being and your aging. And what that means is that implicit in anti-aging medicine, we want to optimize all the things that are going to slow the aging process down as much as possible. It's funny, Jim started by alluding to Genesis and alluding to his, these very old families in Kentucky that he basically learned from. There's a lot of there's a lot of hidden, basically, advice and guidance in old books about life, philosophy, the Bible, religion on this. But it actually is very simple. Part of slowing down the aging process is living close to nature. People have really gotten distracted from that. And I'm going to be honest about why. There is an enormous profit model or profit opportunity selling people products to prevent them from aging. There's nothing wrong with buying products, but what we see happening in this world is that people get distracted by the products from these fundamental daily habits. And, I understand why, but it's our responsibility when we're taking care of someone as a client or a patient to make sure that they understand what the name of the game really is. And anti-aging medicine, the name of the game really is living close to nature. Jonathan Wright, one of the pioneers of bioidentical hormone replacement, said, and this is something that stuck with me since I read it in his book, he said, when in doubt, copy nature. Well, let's copy nature for a moment. What is nature's plan? What is the creation order, if you will? We are born. We live in a 24-hour day-night cycle. We are active during the day. We are dormant and sleep at night. We have seasons of sowing and seasons of reaping. There's times when you're going to be more busy and times when you're going to be less busy. Those always are driven by light. Getting out of touch with light, natural light, is one of the worst things you can do for your health. So we see all these people chasing all this anti-aging stuff. And at the end of the day, at night, they're baking their faces in artificial light that is not really compatible with their biology. And we talk a lot about that. We've got a light therapy course that's currently under construction. Kathleen Horstmeyer and I are creating that from scratch in some Monday webinars. We're having more webinars for you lovely people. We love that you like our content, that you share it, that you subscribe, that you send it to people who need to see it. We hope that you will jump on the email list at stillmanwellness.com so that you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing, because we think it's great. We're here to serve you guys. And in that light therapy course, we're going to be walking through light therapy for different things. And the reason why we're doing it is that light is an incredibly profound effect, has a very incredibly profound effect on life. And it's really, I think, foundational to anti-aging medicine to understand electromagnetics, light, water, magnetism, all these things. People will get, as I was saying, out of phase with their circadian rhythms. Artificial light at night will do this. It will disrupt their sleep. This will disrupt their ability to regenerate and rejuvenate. It will disrupt their hormones. You have to remember that in nature, when you have a long day with more light, deep or long into the evening, it's because you're in that period of sowing and reaping, the summer in the northern climates. And it's going to be followed by a period of rest and quiescence and quiet in the winter, when you're going to have a 16-hour night. Or if you live near the Arctic Circle, in the Arctic Circle, a 20-hour night. Or if you're at the Arctic Circle, most people don't know this, is defined as the latitude north of which the sun never sets on the longest day of the year, which happens to be my birthday. It's coming up. And doesn't rise at all on the shortest day of the year, which is December 21st. So this is one of the keys that is totally missing in the anti-aging and regenerative medicine world. On the flip side of that, some of the most impressive technologies I've seen for anti-aging medicine are without a doubt light. I'm not going to name names or products here, partly because I don't want to make any claims. If you want to learn more about specific products, join the light course. We're going to be covering all of that there. But light's one of the most important things that can either age people faster and be used to slow down the aging process. But the number one thing is people need to realize they've got to honor this order that's been created, where they're supposed to be in darkness at night and they're supposed to be in natural sunlight during the day. And I'm not going to spend any more time talking about light because I've already spent 5 minutes covering it, and we got a lot else to talk about today. But that's one of the most important things for people to know about anti-aging medicine, because it comes back into all these other elements of anti-aging medicine that we get into that are more du jour. And by that, I mean they're more in practice. They're what you're going to hear about at anti-aging medicine conferences or anti-aging medicine clinics, those being primarily hormones. Jim, thoughts on that?
I think that's a great overview. And I think a lot of what the anti-aging world is trying to do is they're trying, we've got this life of luxury, this life of comfort that has risen life expectancy because it's taken away from dying from chronic infections, dying of car accidents. 100 years ago, if you fell off your horse and you broke something severely, you were probably done. But now you're not. But we're trying to make up for it of getting disconnected with nature with drugs, things like metformin or some of the fancy anti-aging drugs that they're coming up with, whether it's peptides or HRT or whatever it is. So it's very interesting. If we just aligned ourselves with nature a little bit more, we'd actually get a lot more out of these things than just trying to basically live a bad lifestyle and try and make up for it, right? With pharmaceuticals. And I mean, you can't make a profit off telling people to go outside and breathe and get fresh air and get your sunrise in the morning. I mean, there's no money in
there's
that,
no
right?
sale there. There's no sale. So light, critical, part of the natural order. The more you break the rules when it comes to light, the faster you're going to age. Does not matter how many fancy tricks you have in your bag to mitigate all those effects. It's going to happen one way or another.
Well, and I think one of the big things you talked about was, pardon me for interrupting you. One of the big things you talked about was seasons, and we don't have seasons anymore. It's go 100% intensity all the time, year round. Like, we don't have, we have this temperature controlled environment. We never there's no hibernation. There's no rest in the winter. You're constantly going, you're constantly having this chronic low level stress that I talk about, like getting in your car and revving your engine in the driveway year round. We don't have seasons of harvest abundance and then seasons of rest. Even in farming, I mean, you look at commercial farming, they never give the land a rest. They don't rotate. They don't, so we've basically, everything we've set up in our society, we build our own form of nature, which is far inferior to, we build our own artificial sun, with lights. I mean, we build a farming ecosystem that goes against the natural order instead of working with it. Right. I mean, think about how smart the Native Americans were in their practices of, hunting and gathering and they used the entire animal. They worked with nature. They didn't work against it. And we in the West have come in and we usually destroy and decimate. And I mean, it works until it doesn't, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I just got this in the mail yesterday. The Marvelous Pigness of Pigs by Joel Salatin.
Yes.
I'm going to be speaking at his farm next month. Join me.
Excellent.
Hollyface Farms, June 14th through 15th, 2 days of Truth Summit.
Is that in Virginia?
It's in Virginia, Swoop, Virginia, right next door to Staunton, where I went to med school. In that book, Joel talks about how essentially, what should a really regenerative, sustainable, ethical farm look like, where the animals are treated well, the land is treated well, because this comes back to, when you have an abundance of health and life and vitality in nature around you, that is going to come back to you. And that might sound weird or hokey or woo or out there or whatever, but bear with me. Look at the centenarians that they're going to parade in front of you, National Geographic, all these fancy magazines that are ironically written by people who couldn't be further from the centenarian model in most cases. Who are they? They are often people of deep faith. One of these groups is the Orthodox Jews in New York City. Even though they live in an incredibly unnatural place, they live a very traditional lifestyle, even down to the sourcing and the raising of their animals, right? Which they, slaughter for food. They have an intense social network, lots of, in-person interaction, right? They live by certain commandments and laws that are generally have been considered, normative in the West for a long time, that are now being basically thrown out the window by people who I think don't really understand. Yeah.
I think obliterated is the better word. Obliterated.
Fair enough. Obliterated, thrown out the window, abandoned by people who I don't think understand what the real consequences of throwing them all out the window wholesale will really be. Those chickens are clearly coming home to roost. Give us a like, share.
I think
some of them know exactly what they're doing, but I think a lot of people who are going along with it don't really understand where this ends.
Fair.
Yeah. And on that note, give us a like, share, comment, or subscribe. The algorithm hates us for saying things like that.
Of course.
So other things about these people, right? They tend to live in, I've noticed that, like, if you look at the blue zones, and I know there's some controversy about whether or not the blue zones are sort of real, but my experience, having traveled to places at least similar to the blue zones and studied them in some detail, is that the basic tenets or principles by which these people live are pretty common and airtight, honestly. So what are they? They live, like I said, close to nature. They're often remote mountainous regions that did not get technology at all, and are in some cases still only just now getting technology in any way. Why is that important? The negative effects of electromagnetic radiations are not to be underestimated. Our high-tech indoor lifestyle is a major problem for modern people's health. There's no reason to believe that it doesn't age us more quickly. One thing that's really interesting about the sunlight literature, right, is that the more sun you get, the lower your risk of death. Now, this in the anti-aging world is something that people often don't talk about, because it's essentially a fact that the more sun you get, the more your skin is going to age. You're going to look older. But a lot of people are going to go out and win the battle for their vanity and lose the battle for their health. What do I mean by that? I can't tell you how many people I've taken care of in the hospital who were dying of a severe advanced disease associated with vitamin D deficiency and lack of sunlight, who had really perfect skin, right? So we're currently, as a society, coping with more and more premature cancer, heart disease, right? They're claiming more lives every year. The solutions that we have available from the conventional medical world are, I think, an abject failure. Tom Cowan's book on cancer and heart disease, his books on these two topics, are fantastic reading for those of you who wonder what I mean by that. And, what does this mean for modern people? It means, to go back to what the centenarians, their lifestyles are like, they have not a lot of technology use. And the more technology use I see in someone's life, the sicker they usually are. Part of this has to do with what Jim was talking about with the seasons of life, sowing and reaping and rest, and then activity. Technology introduces the possibility for constant activity, constant stimulation. This is not natural. It's not normal. It's not appropriate. And I think it's one of the fastest ways to age yourself. They also are as a result of being a remote area, often a mountainous area or a rough terrain, they have to be physically active. They can't just walk out their door and get on the bus. They have to walk up mountains and hills. There's a lot of low-level physical, manual labor activity. It's not like going to the gym. And this is one of the lies that Jim was alluding to earlier, which is that people get this idea that from the anti-aging longevity world that you've got to be really strong and muscular looking, really impressive as a physique in order to live a long time. If anything, what we see happening to bodybuilders, weightlifters who cut their body fat too aggressively is they often wind up in a position where fluid and electrolyte shifts in their body, I believe anyway, lead them to an earlier death. You'll see this often happening. A professional bodybuilder will drop dead in their prime. And it's not that they weren't eating healthy food. Many of them were. It's not that they, weren't physically fit. They were capable of. Jim's laughing at me. I know some of them are not. Yeah. Is that what you're getting at, Jim?
It might have something to do with the massive cocktail of antibiotic stimulants and diuretics that they are on. That might have something to do with it.
You said antibiotics, or did you mean anabolics?
Oh, anabolics. Yeah. Anabolic stimulants and diuretics. And let's face it, like if you drive your car really hard, it's going to break more, right?
Mm-hmm.
High level performers are going to die. Like you don't see guys that played in the NFL or professional wrestlers or people that are high level athletes living into their 90s. They just don't. I mean, you burn the candle hard, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to choose. I would much rather die a little younger and live a very passionate, vibrant life than be sitting around playing bridge at 105. Right? That's just me. Right.
Right.
And I'm not. I don't. All my grandparents have all lived to the late 80s, early 90s. So.
Mm-hmm.
I've got good genetics, which is probably one of the reasons I'm still here. But you need to flirt with performance, not marry it. And there's a big push by people today to be like, and I'm a strength coach, and people definitely need to lift weights to make up for the fact that they aren't active every day, and they're not like, they're not cutting, going out with a machete and cutting stuff, or they're not, herding their cows, or they're not, they're not doing this manual labor, mowing grass every day. You can make up for some of that in the weight room, but there's no need to turn yourself into, a bodybuilder or anything like that. If anything, that's going to take away from your life expectancy, then add to it.
Absolutely. And on that note, as I talked about the food, I've said multiple times now that they live close to nature. Part of that is having whole natural foods. We see lots of people who are trying to make up for a lack of low-level manual labor by hitting the gym really, really hard or doing high-intensity interval workouts and so on and so forth. We don't see that working. In the same way, I don't see people using processed foods getting the same results that people who go for whole, real foods get. And this goes deeper than this. There's big differences between food that's factory farmed and food that's, farmed by a local organic, or not even organic, just a local farmer who's running an integrated farm where he doesn't have to use a lot of fancy tricks and crazy, extreme measures in order to get things to grow and survive. And so I really believe that eating local from farmers who whose methods you understand, that are clearly honoring the land, is actually really, really important. And when you look at these centenarians and where they live, a lot of them live in communities where they're growing a lot of their own food. They're taking care of themselves by obviously living close to nature, having this low level activity, and so on and so forth. I mentioned already that they have really strong community. A lot of them eat a lot of fish. You'll notice they're all next to the ocean. That goes back to the sunlight principle. And that goes back to the whole idea that, we need a certain amount of sunlight in order to be optimally healthy. And the more sun you get, the longer you're going to live statistically. I'm not familiar with any study that's documented that at a certain point, the sunlight you get actually reduces your longevity. I have never seen a result like that. And I think that is a very broad-based overview of what it means to really live a lifestyle that's anti-aging, or pro-longevity, maybe I'll say, looks like. And what I find ironic about this is when you look into the anti-aging space, the doctors, practitioners, gurus, coaches, whatever, who are talking about it, many of them completely ignore this, never talk about it. And it all becomes about, well, you got to buy this red light therapy bed, and you've got to own this sauna, and you've got to take these supplements, and you've got to follow this weird diet that no, civilizations ever followed before for the rest of your life. And we see that approach falling apart for people time and again, which is why we're kicking the webinar off by explaining all that in detail. And for the rest of the webinar, I actually want to talk about what things I do take from the anti-aging medicine world, because there is a ton of value for people that I think they need to understand the context within which it works and can be used appropriately. But before I jump into that, Jim, got any closing thoughts on the lifestyle of longevity?
Yeah, I think the two big things are social media and all the technology have basically decimated human connection, which I think is massive for, if you look at the Great Cholesterol Myth, they look at that one city in Pennsylvania who everybody smoked, everybody drank, but they had such great social connection. They actually were healthier than the people that didn't do those things in other areas, right? So social connection is a huge, huge part. And I think modern life is destroying that personal interaction, right? And then the other thing that's not taken into account is these super centenarians are not eating massive amount of calories with a massive amount of empty calories, right? So whereas in our modern world, we're eating a massive amount of empty calories, they're not having to eat as much because they generally have more nutrition in the food, or the food isn't available, right? There isn't massive amounts of cheap processed food available for them. So they eat less, and generally when you eat less over time, you tend to have a tendency to live longer, as long as it's not in the verge of starvation, right? So those are two factors that I think are often overlooked in our modern world anyways.
I agree. And on that note, let's jump into all the fun tools and tactics that we can bring to bear on anti-aging from the medical world. I'm not going to talk much about things like herbs and supplements today. And the reason why is that I feel like I talk about those things all the time. They have a place. There's a lot of herbs and supplements that, have been documented to promote longevity, things like turmeric and berberine. But part of why I don't want to talk about them is A, there's so many of them. And B, each of them really deserves its own time and space to sort of be gone over. And the title of this topic or talk is Anti-Aging Medicine. So I want to talk about what the medical world has to offer, things that are injected, implanted, overlaid, things like laser therapies, facials, all kinds of stuff. The first broad category of things I'm going to talk about is facials and plastic surgery. So, and this is really, I may not be encompassing the full scope of things that this includes, but these are things that you can go to a clinic or a med spa to have done to your skin. And what is the value in them? How do I use them? There's a lot of different types of these therapies too. Like facials can mean facials with things like microneedling, where you're actually, actually damaging the skin slightly to get it to regenerate in a certain way. It can mean a photofacial, which is a facial that's done with light. Whatever of these modalities you use, know that they clearly, I think, have a place in helping us to maintain a youthful appearance. Some of this then obviously gets into plastic surgery, right? A little nip and tuck. I'm going to leave aside the ethics of plastic surgery because that's a whole nother big can of worms that I don't feel like getting into today. Suffice it to say, I have absolutely seen people's lives changed by plastic surgery when it corrected elements of their appearance that they felt affected by very severely with shame. And that means to me that there is a tremendous potential benefit there. Obviously, there's people who are going out and having surgeries done that they really don't need. And that in the long run, I've seen this cause more harm than good. But I think it's worthwhile to know that if you are looking at your appearance, you're looking at yourself and you're thinking, I feel badly about this thing, then having it corrected surgically or going through a series of procedures that could correct it, like, let's say, facials or photofacials, is a totally reasonable thing to do. And, my my responsibility to my patients is to tell them when they're making a mistake. I don't see these things ever causing problems in my patients. Perhaps I will. And for more, in depth, I have to take it on a case by case basis because no one's the same. We are still taking patients, stillmanmd.com, apply for consultation. We're happy to talk to you about this kind of thing if you need it. So that's one of the big things from the anti-aging world that I think is great. We can maintain a youthful appearance for longer. And I think in the end, that's good. And I don't see a downside to it. So
people do have a tendency to get carried away with it.
They do.
And just like, well, and here's the thing too. We deal with this with weight loss or whatever it is. If you don't like yourself and you're 15 pounds overweight, there's no guarantee you're going to like yourself when you've lost 10 or 15 pounds.
Yes,
right?
That's true.
Where I've seen the cosmetic surgery really, really make a difference is where people fix things like deviated septums in their nose and things like that, right? The other problem with plastic surgery, if it's not just like peptides, HRT, anything else, if it's not combined with lifestyle change, you can end up looking particularly worse if you continue the same lifestyle and you just get your triceps tucked or your tummy tucked or whatever you do, right? So you've got to combine that with lifestyle change so that you don't end up looking really weird. Because I've had some people that basically just relied on plastic surgery and then they're never satisfied, right? So they get this taken care of, and then 6 months later they're like, well, my chin's still not perfect, or my nose is still not the way I want it, and then it becomes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So just like anything else, it's whether it's nicotine or peptides or HRT, it has to be done in a way that goals are realistic, and that you're also doing all the things you need to do to maximize result, and understanding that you're not everyone's going to be perfect either, right? So it's definitely a case by case thing.
And that's where, if we suspect that someone does not have a healthy emotional relationship with themselves, let alone other people, one follows the other, obviously, then that's where we usually will recommend that people go do some neurofeedback, some EMDR, and create find some kind of positive community. On that note, actually, we have new community options coming out at our Kajabi website at stillmanwellness.com, where we're going to be launching those late next month. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you're on the email list at stillmanwellness.com. But I want to piggyback on what Jim was saying about this, because one other pitfall that I foresee for people is, with facials and plastic surgery, we have to talk about things that get injected into the body. This is the categories of lip fillers, Botox, implants of various types, dental, breast implants, butt implants. I mean, some of the implants they're putting in now, I never thought we would bother, but here we are. These we do see people having problems with. People are more and more and more aware of this. Marcia Angel, former editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, wrote a great book. I think it was called Science on Trial, where she basically goes through what I think could accurately be defined as, or described as, the failure of the regulatory complex of the United States to properly vet certain products in the breast implant industry before they were, used broadly or widely upon the public. And I've had many patients come back to me who had their breast implants removed because they found that it was affecting their health, and they did see a significant improvement in their health after having them removed. I'm very wary and skeptical of anything that gets implanted into the body, period. And even more skeptical of anything that gets implanted forever. The other day, we saw a hair tissue test where somebody had a very high level of cobalt and a very high level of nickel. They had pins. I think it was in a shoulder. And you'll see this. And they're going to say, well, it's safe because it doesn't kill anyone that quickly. But when you look, in my experience, at the kind of safety studies people do in medicine in order to vet products, they're not asking the question, does this change morbidity and mortality on a long time scale? And there's a good reason for that. People have real problems now, and they might need rods and pins and screws and who knows whatever else in order to deal with those problems. And I respect that. However, if you never gather that data, which frankly, I don't think anyone really is, then you never really know if, for example, turning everyone into the bionic man actually lowers their lifespan. And that's part of why I believe when people get some of these things out, they feel so much better. Now, I can't prove, nor would I presume to say that all this nickel and cobalt that we saw in this person's hair is having a negative impact on their health. Far from it. Many, many people are out there running around with their titanium alloy hips, knees, shoulders, etc. And that's great. I am happy for them. I in no way want anyone to take away from this that I'm a bear or negative about joint implants. However, it's worth asking the question, why do people wear out their joints? Why do they wear out their teeth? If you look at the type of people that we look at in the centenarian studies or centenarian areas of the world, the blue zones, these are not people who are running into the orthopedic surgeon's office for shots into their knees or new dental implants or veneers. They might not have the prettiest smiles. I mean, what do you really expect from your teeth? They might have to last an entire century or more. They might get a little bit worn down. Your smile might not be that pretty. But we know, certainly from the work of, say, Weston A. Price, that people can go their whole life with a beautiful smile and incredibly powerful, strong, healthy teeth and never have a problem. So why are we not doing that in our modern world? It's because of all the deviations from the lifestyle that we talked about at the beginning. Now, when you have a problem, a tooth gets knocked out, or if it may just be cosmetic. People want to use Botox, they want to use fillers. I think they just need to be mindful of the fact that anything that gets injected or implanted into the body can have untoward side effects. I'm seeing more and more things on social media, people raising awareness about this, people talking about what happened to them after procedure, after an implant, after an injection. That doesn't surprise me at all. And I think, caveat emptor, buyer beware, these products are not studied for their effects on your longevity. They're studied for, do they work? And are there any adverse effects that are so profound, so obvious, so undeniable, in close proximity to the injection, surgical procedure, whatever, that we can't deny that they're potentially harmful, right? Jim?
I think the main question to ask is, why is so many people opting for these things? Why are people so afraid of aging?
I agree.
And I think a lot of that comes back to faith. I think basically with our modern world, this humanistic kind of view that this is it. This is all there is, right? There's nothing beyond this. You live now. When it's over, it's over. There's nothing beyond this. We're just this, this fleeting life we live with no purpose, no real afterlife, from a Christian worldview, this is just a temporary vessel, right? So we've taken away that faith-based, we've made ourselves into almost like a deity. So people are wanting to hang on as long as they can to a certain appearance, or, look at how much what is attractive has changed over the centuries. In the Victorian era, it was actually attractive to be a little overweight because that means you weren't starving to death, right? We went through that really weird phase in the 70s where the Twiggy thing was kind of in, which, I don't get it. But, so I think part of this is a lack of faith and a lack of purpose, and pulling faith in God. And it's funny, I'm talking about this, but, pulling faith more and any kind of values like that out of the world, it has really led to this, like, being over focused on what your appearance is, right? Because there's more to you than your physical body. You have a soul. There's who you are as a person is very valuable. And you look at these cultures, even here in Nicaragua, even though it's being pushed into a modern world, they still value older people here. Like in Asian culture, older people are respected. And like, I give the example of, I'm almost 50, and I walked into a barbershop here and there was a line, and they were all young kids in front of me, and they made me go first. You're the elder, you go first, right? That doesn't happen in the United States. You're the elder, go to the back of the line. How dare you get in our way? Like, you're slowing us down, kind of thing. Whereas here, it's a totally different perspective, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think part of that is, and you'll notice this, right? In a natural order, old people are revered and loved because they've raised the generation below them, hopefully with kindness and love and so on and so forth. And they recognize the sacrifices. Young people recognize the sacrifice that older people made to help them enjoy life, have a life. And that's part of that natural dynamic, which I think really sadly gets lost when people get distracted by the things we see them getting distracted by. And that's why having traditional culture, I think, is very much a part of actually having a solid longevity anti-aging game plan. We see so many people who are really sad and really unhappy in their lives who sort of have it all, and helping them find a way to have it all, and not just the material possessions in life, but a healthy, happy family, really positive social connection, meaning in life. I mean, one thing that I've, is really something, I think it's the statistics on retirement. The year you retire is one of the most dangerous years of your life. That's about having a purpose. That's about doing something. Retirement is a contrivance of the modern world. I guarantee you that where people live a long time, there is no retirement. There's just a change in the season of your life where you go from working really, really, really hard, many, many, many hours a day, into a season that's more quiescent, more relaxed, more, I don't know what you call it. You're not working as hard.
More of a mentor than an actual work,
yes.
Like a doer.
Yeah. Right. And people need to embrace that. And I think that no matter how hard people work on their appearance, there's something really lost when they don't have people who they've mentored and taught and raised to love them as they get older. And that goes back to, what I talked about when it comes to appearances and pretty privilege in the beginning. So I think that's enough on fillers, implants, Botox, etc. I will say quickly that the ones I use, or things I'll mention to patients who are asking me about, particularly for teeth, right? And all this has to be done on a case-by-case basis. This is a conversation between Jim and I. We're not practicing medicine via the internet. You're not our patients. You are someone watching this somewhere on social media. This has to be done on a case-by-case basis. I've had people where I said, hey, you should probably get that joint replaced. Or I've had people who say, maybe we can buy you a little bit more time. Light therapy, increasingly in my experience, is becoming one of the keys to prolonging joint longevity. That's why we're launching our light therapy course, which, again, sign up for the email newsletter, stillmanwellness.com. You'll get information on how to join that. The next big topic to talk about is protecting your skin. This is one of the hottest topics in the world. One of the most important things for people to understand is that the cosmetics industry has a short-term profit model on making your skin look good today, even if they're poisoning it long-term for tomorrow. I've observed many times in cases in my practice that when a person went through the process of cleaning the skin and letting it recover from years of being covered up basically with cosmetic products, often the skin would then get better. Using natural products in your cosmetics is critical. I do not have a favorite product line because it's not really my area of expertise. But believe me, if you don't have one, your crunchy, natural-minded friends will definitely have one, and it can work for you. But I really caution people against using the mainstream cosmetics because they're full of things that are definitely not compatible with living a long, healthy life and have been linked to all kinds of medical problems. But again, for the same reason with the implants, fillers, etc., they don't get studied for their effects on longevity. They get studied for, do they harm or outright kill anyone fast enough for us to not be able to deny it? And that's why, by the way, you'll see these lawsuits coming out. For example, this Tylenol lawsuit, I think, with Children's Health. Tylenol's been on the market since the early 1900s. They're only now figuring out that it has this potential or likely or suspected link to serious childhood illnesses? Just wait. It takes a long time for the epidemiologist to really get enough data together to convince a jury that something's dangerous enough for it to have labels and warnings and things like that. Which is why, again, I go back to copy nature, one of my favorite aphorisms from Jonathan Wright. When you copy nature, you really, generally speaking, if you're wrong, you're going to be wrong in a very small way. So how do you protect your skin? We talk about that in the light therapy course, which is, again, you can sign up for. But basically, you want to get sunlight earlier in the day, later in the day. That's when the strong UV that ages the skin is not going to be present. And then you want to moderate your dose of UV light in the middle of the day so you don't burn your skin. And then the reality is you've got competing interests if you're trying to protect your skin from UV light more than that, because on the one hand, UV light and sunlight in general has many more benefits than just making vitamin D. And so you are at odds with your longevity if you're avoiding strong UV light in the middle of the day. Jim?
This is one of my favorite topics because I spend more time in the sun than just about anybody. And I don't have like glaring skin damage on my face or anything like that, right?
A lot of that is it's a matter of things like genetics, lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with timing. People just don't spend enough time in the morning and the evening sun, and they only go outside when it's the hottest, right? I would be more concerned about baking in front of your TV than I would being out in the sun. I think in the long run, this is just my opinion. This obviously isn't medical advice. I think the TV and the screens are going to damage your skin, and getting sunlight through windows and things like that. You look at some of the truck driver stuff where they've got some of that stuff that happens to people. I think that plays a huge role. The fake light plays a big role in aging the skin quickly, because you don't have any of the healing properties of, even when there's high UV, you still have some of the healing spectrums of light in there. And then also in the morning and the evening that's when the real healing spectrum is there. And that's what builds your solar callus, right? And so people never spend enough time out to develop a solar callus, right? It'd be like you going out and trying to run a marathon without training for it, right? You're going to have shin splints. You're probably going to fracture your femurs. You're going to have all sorts of crazy stuff, right? So people spend 90% of their day indoors in air conditioning, and then all of a sudden they decide to go to the beach and it's 90 plus degrees, and they think slathering on that SP50 is going to save them, right? And nope,
not at all. All right, I think that's enough about light and the skin. Again, join the light course. We'll teach you more there. Peptides are now the rave in anti-aging and regenerative medicine, with good reason. Peptides rock.
A raving rage.
That's right. They rock. They're awesome. But don't be distracted from the hard work of living a healthy lifestyle compatible with longevity by shiny objects like peptides. It's not that they don't work. It's that if you are baking in front of a television every night, if you're addicted to your cell phone, if you don't have positive social connection, if you don't have a purpose in life, if you eat garbage, if you don't exercise in a at least reasonable way, if you're not getting time outside, it doesn't matter how many peptides you use. You're going to get sick and die young. I hate to break it to you. It's just how that cookie crumbles. So with peptides, I'm not going to go over an exhaustive, treatment on this. I really would recommend people check out Jay Campbell's stuff on this, because I think he puts out the most digestible and also comprehensive work on it that I also find is it's balanced in terms of what I think a risks benefits are.
It's very overwhelming though. So
I was going to say that. Yeah, it is too much for a lot of people. What I found is that most people who come into my practice, we're so busy focusing on the fundamentals and optimizing their nutrition and their lifestyle that we don't get to peptides. If we do, I have a conviction that it's probably a handful of peptides that are really going to be game changers for people's longevity. You don't have to go through reams and reams and reams of all these different peptides and what they do and how they work. At the end of the day, one of the best things that you can do with peptides, in my opinion, is to boost things like growth hormone. Growth hormone, Jay's put out a lot of great content on. It's also one of the most controversial topics in anti-aging medicine for various reasons. I think we're going to come down at the end of the day and find out that growth hormone is one of the keys to longevity. I also think that if you use growth hormone and you don't live a healthy, Jay would say, optimized life, you are headed for disaster. Because what growth hormone is going to do is it's going to trigger growth of cells. As you can well imagine, if you trigger growth of cells that are unhealthy, then you can create more problems, right? And if you trigger the growth of cells that are outright cancerous, that's a huge problem. And that's why there's so many skeptics of growth hormone in the conventional medical community and why it's very difficult to get a hold of. However, higher levels of growth hormone correlate with longevity. And that doesn't make sense if it is ipso facto triggering and causing cancer. I just think a healthy lifestyle optimizes growth hormone levels. And so it's something of a confounding variable. Do I think that the peptides that increase growth hormone production will in the long run be shown to improve longevity? My jury's out. I'm open to the idea. I think it's perfectly reasonable to suspect. Jim, you've looked into this, I think, more than I have. What are your thoughts on this?
Definitely before the age of 50, but after the age of 50, your body just doesn't have enough IGF-1 to produce that growth hormone with some of the things like ipamorelin and other agonists like that. But it's just like we've constantly stated before, peptides are great, especially if used surgically. Same with the HRT.
Yes.
They can't be the foundation of your house.
Nope.
If you're not sleeping well, if you're using modafinil and Adderall because you're an attorney or an MD and you think that, to perform better, and you think that adding peptides and HRT are going to help you live longer, you're just going to end up crashing your car at a faster speed. And that's what we see. If you're just, instead of crashing at 55, you're going to crash at 105, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we see that all the time where people just are always trying to push, and they're just looking for more things to allow them to drive the car harder and faster without taking it to the shop. So all of these things are a little science experiment. And if you are going to start with them, start with one or two and give them a try, but make sure that your lifestyle's in order. Make sure, you're taking care of your stress, you're sleeping, you're doing all the things you need to do. And some of these things will definitely help. But they can't be the foundation of your health.
And on that note, let's talk about hormones. So hormone optimization is one of the keys to really good anti-aging medicine. I said earlier, copy nature. You might say, well, okay, Dr. Stillman, you said copy nature. Nature's plan is clearly for menopause and andropause, the natural decline of sex steroid hormones in men and women. That actually goes along as well with the decline in thyroid hormone as well. However, it's very clear to me that this is one of the places where you can frankly cheat nature by adding hormones into the mix and replenishing hormone levels in men and women as they age to youthful natural levels. By doing this, we do not increase the risk of disease. I'll stand on that one. That I really strongly believe is supported by the literature, even though other people will say that I'm wrong or that I could be wrong. And I'm of course open to it that I could be wrong, but there's an abundance of literature showing that at appropriate doses, this is totally safe. So you use appropriate doses and you don't create more risk, and you create massive benefit. Massive benefit meaning you don't lose muscle mass as you age. Your bone density is maintained. Your skin maintains a youthful appearance. All of these things are very, very well established properties of hormones. And when these hormones drop out, the opposite happens. People lose muscle mass, they lose skin integrity. Many of them notice they have this onset of things like brain fog, they have worse fatigue, they may really struggle with their metabolism. No matter what they eat or how they exercise, the weight just comes on. This leaves many people as they age feeling really sad, disillusioned, even downright hopeless, feeling like the golden years of their life when they were hoping to be able to go out and do things like play golf, take international vacations, any of their hobbies, hiking, biking, whatever. This also has an effect on joints. I mean, a lot of people who don't optimize their hormones are going to struggle more with their joint health. I've seen that many times. When we optimize these things, we optimize physiologic function. I would say it's safe to say, retard the aging process. I defy anyone who would say otherwise. I don't think it's fair to say otherwise at all. And that's why hormones are a really big part of my practice. We replete these in men and women. Again, in conversation with the patient, making sure that we're doing the right thing by them and that they're comfortable with how high their levels may be, because you can overdose them, to be honest with you. And we see a lot of people out there who are not practicing, I think, very responsibly. They're giving people huge doses of hormones and they're running people at very high levels. I'm not advocating for that. Most of those people, in my experience, what's happening is they're using hormones in order to overcome underlying problems like improper diet, lack of exercise, lack of a healthy environment, toxic interpersonal relationships. They're using the hormones to overcome those things, just like you might, if you wanted to and you didn't know any better, if your parking brake was on and you hit the gas pedal, you'll make the car go faster. But it's a much better strategy to take the parking brake off. I may or may not have done that once or twice. But who hasn't, right?
That's true. I think a big part of it is our modern world is just destroying people's hormone levels. And so, you look at the average, 40-year-old male, their testosterone level is a quarter or not even half of what it was in the 40s or 50s. I mean, that's really fast. So what happens when you have a 30 or 40-year-old male who's here, who should be here, and then they start the aging process and they start, ramping down?
Yes.
What happens when you're at 300 or 400 when you should be at 800 or 900, and you start that decline? So I think a lot of it is because of the amount of toxins in our environment, because people don't get outside as much as they should, because of our modern world, people are just, their hormone levels are chronically low.
Right.
And so getting a little bit of help combined with lifestyle to get those hormones up a little higher, because it's not like you're going to at 50, you're going to set your hormones and you're going to stay there all the way till you pass. You're going to adjust your dosages as you get older to come down. It's just, you're not going to have a drop from 300 to 0 in a 10 or 15 year period. Instead, it's going to be, 800, 900 down gradually as you age, so that it's more of a graceful descent as opposed to dropping like an amusement park.
And what I see is that they're essentially creating a society of eunuchs, people who do not have the sex steroid hormone levels to think for themselves, take care of themselves, and question what they're being told.
You will own nothing and like it, and you will eat the bugs.
No, thank you. Drugs, real quickly before we jump off. Metformin is probably going to come ahead, and rapamycin as well are probably going to come out here soon in the next 5, 10, 15 years as two of the greatest anti-aging longevity breakthroughs ever. I see no problem with these drugs. I happily prescribe them for patients who say, I want to take these for their anti-aging benefits. Are there some caveats, some risks? Yes. There's some very special patient populations where you have to be wary of this. But generally speaking, I think they're going to come out ahead. We'll see if I'm wrong. I'm open to that, obviously. But at the very least, I don't see currently any harm in these drugs. And I'm sure that there's going to be more that come out over the years. Although I will say one other thing I've noticed is, if you go all in on anti-aging longevity medicine, you just wind up with an unbelievably long list of supplements and drugs and hormones and peptides. And I think there's an anti-aging and longevity benefit in simplicity. People who make it to 100 are not doing this, generally speaking. We just think that we can use these things in order to compensate for the stresses of modern life and living very far from nature the way that we clearly should if we're truly serious about living a long, healthy life.
Yeah, you do all these fancy things and you get hit by a school bus,
Right. So thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you are on the newsletter at stillmanwellness.com. We got lots of exciting things coming up, particularly next month. We've got some new and exciting memberships and subscriptions coming out. The light therapy course is live now. You'll have links to that soon in emails. I look forward to seeing you there. We're going to have live Q&As, and the episodes are being recorded in the next several weeks, next couple of months by myself and Kathleen Horsemeyer. Jim, anything you want to add?
Nope, that was great. I think we had fun. The cool thing about the memberships we have coming out is we're going to talk a lot about things that we can't talk about on here.
That's a fact, yeah. And one last thing One last thing I'll mention is we are taking new patients at stillmanmd.com. Click apply for consultation. You've got to either live in Florida or New York to see us virtually, or you've got to be willing to fly and see me here in sunny Naples, Florida, which is a beautiful place to visit if you've never been. I hope to see some of you down here at our practice. Take care. Have a great day. And don't forget to get outside.
Exactly.